Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here to unpack potent research, giving you that practical edge.
Hmm.
And today, we're really diving into something foundational, I think, for anyone heading into counseling psychology.
Absolutely.
It's Clara E. Hill's chapter, Integrating the Skills of the Exploration Stage. It's from her book, Helping Skills You Know the One.
A classic.
Right. So our mission today really is to just distill the core wisdom here, give you a clear, kind of engaging roadmap for, well, connecting with clients, understanding their stories,
Mm.
and really setting the stage for growth. We're focusing on you, the future helper, mastering this art of exploration.
And what's really fascinating, I find, about this exploration stage is it looks simple, doesn't it, on the surface?
Yeah, it does.
But it's where the magic, the real understanding actually starts. You know, Emerson said, it is a luxury to be understood.
Mm. Good question.
It is. And this dive, it's not just about the what to do, but really why this first step, this empathetic journey, matters so much for the client, obviously, but also for you,
Yeah.
for your development as a helper.
Yeah.
It's about truly trying to step into someone else's world.
Mhm.
And that's, well, it's a powerful thing.
Absolutely. And that, I think, leads us right into laying the foundation, the actual heart of exploration. Hill makes this point, and it's crucial. You just cannot assume you know anything.
Right. Well,
Every person, every problem, it's unique, it's complex. And this stage is where clients, well, they kind of teach you how to be their helper.
that's a great way to put it.
Think about it like new parents, right? They can read every single book,
Hmm.
but they only really learn from their own baby. That specific infant with their own culture, their experiences, they teach the parents what they need.
Yeah.
Clients do the same. They teach you.
And that individualized focus brings us straight to a really core concept here. Case conceptualization. This is kind of your mental map, right?
Yeah.
Where you start piecing together how the client's problems might have started and, well, how you can best help. And in this stage, the exploration stage, it's all about a client-centered view.
Client-centered. Got it.
It breaks down into a few parts. First, your observations. Now, demographics are useful, context, age, background, sure,
The basics?
the basics. But the real gold, often,
Yeah.
is in the in-session behavior.
Yeah.
How they sit, a quick look away, the tone of voice changing.
Subtle stuff.
Exactly.
Hmm.
It's not just detail. It's often signaling what's really going on underneath the words. You're looking at nonverbals, energy, the problem they bring in, but always, open, not judging.
Right.
Second, think about the relationship itself, the one forming right there between you two.
Okay.
This means looking inwards. How are you feeling with this client?
Did.
Anxious, sympathetic,
Yep.
maybe even a little annoyed. Yeah. And then, how might that connect to your own stuff, your own hot buttons? It's a really vital self-check.
Makes sense.
Third, you start forming an initial client-centered conceptualization. From this angle, problems often trace back to early relationships. Parents, usually.
Mm-hmm.
We look for what are called conditions of worth, like how much did the client feel they had to change or hide parts of themselves to be accepted.
Oh, okay.
This often creates a gap, right, between their actual self and their ideal self. And that can lead to them distorting or denying their real experiences.
Wow. Okay.
And finally, the treatment plan for this stage, it's simple but powerful. Just be fully present. Provide those facilitative conditions.
Facilitative conditions, right?
Yeah, that's your empathy, your warmth, being genuine, and that unconditional positive regard.
Mm-hmm.
Basically accepting them as they are.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is offering a corrective relational experience, something that lets their natural drive towards growth, towards self-actualization, kind of break free.
That's a really clear breakdown. And Hill gives this example, right? Fictional helper's note.
Yeah, Exhibit 9.1.
Right. So you can almost picture it, the observations.
Yeah.
Maybe a student struggling, seems quiet, fidgets a bit. Mm-hmm. The helper note's feeling, I don't know, a bit anxious maybe, but curious too.
Yeah.
Then the initial thought process, maybe linking the struggles to parents being critical, creating those conditions of worth, that gap between who they are and who they think they should be.
Exactly.
And the treatment plan. Simple, but deep. Focus on empathy. Use open questions. Encourage them to explore themselves. Offer that positive regard. It's, like you said, a roadmap, but one that's alive, evolving.
Precisely. It's not static.
So, okay, we've got the foundation, the conceptualization. How do we actually do this? What are the goals in this stage?
Good question.
Seems like basically three things. First, help the client relax, right? create a safe atmosphere.
Crucial.
Second, help them explore the story, the content of their problems.
The narrative.
And third, this feels really key, help them actually experience the feelings tied to those stories, all within that accepting relationship.
Yes. Content and feeling, both are vital.
But here's a sticky point, maybe. How do you make sure the client actually wants to explore? Some might just want a quick fix, right?
That definitely happens. It's about checking in, clarifying the process.
Okay. And with these goals sometimes overlapping, how do you choose which skill to pull out of the toolkit at any given moment? That seems tricky.
It is tricky, and there's no simple formula, honestly.
Mm.
But the core skills, when integrated, create this dynamic flow.
Okay, so what are they?
First, the absolute baseline, attending and listening. Just showing you're there, you're focused, you're ready.
Step one?
Then restatements. These are just concise reflections of the content. Client says, I bombed the test. You might say, so the test didn't go well.
Got it. Mirroring the facts.
Yeah. Good for clarifying, helps them think deeper, shows you're tracking, especially if they're kind of rambling.
Right, makes sense.
Next, and so important for this stage, reflection of feelings. Identifying and actually saying out loud the emotion you're hearing or sensing. Client talks about tension with their daughter-in-law. You might say, sounds like you feel tense about that, unsure how she's reacting.
Naming the feeling.
Exactly. It encourages them to feel it, offers support. It's really helpful for clients who maybe aren't great at naming their own feelings. Sometimes just gently offering a feeling you sense can open things up.
Okay. What if that doesn't get them talking more?
Good point. That's where open questions and probes come in. You use these when you need to gently encourage more depth, or if restatements aren't quite doing it. Like after reflecting the tension, you might ask, tell me more about what that tension feels like for you. Or if they say, I feel anxious. A really powerful probe is, what's it like for you feeling anxious right now?
Asking about the experience of the feeling.
Exactly. These also help keep the session flowing or explore new angles, past examples, future worries, stuff like that.
Okay, so you've got restatements, reflections, open questions.
Right, and the art is in alternating skills. You don't want to just fire questions like an interviewer.
Right, that would feel like an interrogation.
Totally.
Yeah.
So you kind of dance between maybe an open question, then a restatement or a reflection. It keeps it dynamic, and it gently gives the lead back to the client. Empowers them.
Nice. What about closed questions? Are they ever okay?
Yeah, sometimes, but sparingly. They're for specific, crucial info, like, is your mother still alive?
Okay.
Or maybe checking immediate safety.
Okay. Important stuff.
Right. But always use them for the client's benefit, not just because you're curious. And usually you can rephrase them into an open question anyway.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you need to be flexible.
Totally. You're like that personal scientist Hill talks about. Always observing, seeing what works, tweaking your approach. It's fluid.
I like that personal scientist. Less pressure to be perfect. Okay, so let's get practical. How does this all look in an actual session? Preparing, starting, ending.
Right, the flow.
Yeah, the flow. Preparing first. It's more than just reading notes, isn't it?
Oh, much more. It's about centering yourself, getting in touch with your own feelings, maybe some deep breaths, putting aside your other worries.
Bracketing.
Exactly, just being present and practicing skills so they feel, more automatic. You want to go in without a fixed agenda, just ready to listen. Even small things matter, like dressing professionally, maybe one step up from casual, shows you take it seriously. And a big practical tip, try not to take tons of notes during the session.
Really? Why is that?
It can pull you out of the moment. Better to record, with permission of course, and listen back later. Let you be fully present.
Okay, good tip. So you're centered, you're ready. Now, the beginning of the session, the opening act, you called it.
Yeah, it says the tone, keep the greeting simple, respectful, especially important across cultures.
Right.
Then transparency. Tell them about recording, supervision if applicable, and crucially, the limits of confidentiality.
The big one.
The big one. You have to state clearly, everything's confidential unless there's immediate danger, harm to self, harm to others, or suspected child or elder abuse. That's the law.
Non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable. Then briefly explain the process. We have 30 minutes for exploration. And you mention your credentials briefly if needed. Clarify rules like time, cost. And then the key move. Open the floor. What would you like to talk about today?
Okay. What if they just sit there? Silence.
Dealing with silence. It happens. First, just pause. Empathically. Don't rush in because you're anxious.
Easier said than done, maybe.
True. But try. You might gently reflect. Seems like it might be hard to know where to start. Reassure them it's their time. If it goes on, a gentle probe like, can you tell me a bit about what brought you here? Usually helps.
Okay. And then when they are talking, facilitating exploration.
Your main job is listening, empathically, paying attention, adjusting your eye contact based on their comfort. Offer reassurance if it feels genuine and needed. But mostly, when they're exploring productively, you kind of fade back. Like Jung said about dream interpretation, the analyst should almost disappear, let the dreamer do the work, facilitate, don't dominate.
Okay. Got it. And ending the session. Can't just cut them off.
Definitely not. Be mindful of time. Give a gentle heads up. Maybe 5 minutes before, we have about 5 minutes left. Particularly important, cross-culturally, time perception varies.
Good point.
Then summarize what they shared. Ideally, make it collaborative. So today, we talked a lot about X and Y. Does that capture it? Or even ask them to summarize. It provides closure, checks understanding.
That structure makes so much sense. Okay, let's make it even more real. Walk us through that Sandra example from the book.
Right, the Sandra and client dialogue.
Yeah, so Sandra starts well, right? Clear intro. Hi, I'm Sandra. 30 minutes. Explore what you like. Then the open question. Where would you like to begin?
Classic opening.
The client talks about being anxious, procrastinating on a paper. Sandra reflects. You're really upset with yourself. Client talks grad school fears. Sandra reflects again. You feel scared because your current behaviors might limit your future goals.
Good reflections, keeping the client connected to feelings.
Yeah. Then Sandra probes. Tell me about the last time. She even notes nonverbals. I can hear the panic in your voice.
Nice. Picking up cues.
And the client really opens up then about a fight her mom and has this insight. Maybe I can't write because I'm confused about this fight.
Boom. That's exploration leading to insight.
Exactly. But then Sandra stumbles a bit. She makes an inaccurate reflection, kind of a projection. I wonder if you're somewhat confused.
Happens.
And the client corrects her. No, I'm angry. But Sandra recovers well, reflects the anger. Sounds like you are really torn up inside.
Good save. Back on track.
But then comes the big moment. Client asks, what should I do? And Sandra, maybe feeling pressure, gives premature advice.
The advice trap.
Yeah. Go talk to your instructor. Talk to your boyfriend. Tell your mom to get counseling, like bang, bang, bang.
Whoa, overload.
And the client's response, just, oh, silence. That, says so much, doesn't it?
It really does. Deflation.
But Sandra catches it, shows great awareness. She says, sorry, I got carried away with advice. Apologizes. And then gently asks an open question again to get back to exploring.
That self-correction is gold.
Yeah.
It shows you're human and you're prioritizing their process over being right.
Totally. It shows the skills, the common pitfalls, and how to recover. It's all part of it.
It really is. And look, helping is human. Challenges are going to come up. It's just normal.
That's good to hear because, yeah, even with skills, things get difficult. So what are some common sticky situations and how do we handle them?
Okay, yeah, you'll definitely run into things. From the client side, you might get overly talkative clients.
Yeah.
Often that's a defense, right? You might need to gently interrupt. Maybe, sorry to interrupt, I just want to make sure I'm following. Could we focus on specific point for a moment? Respectful redirection.
Tricky balance.
It is. Then you have overly quiet clients. Could be shyness, anxiety, resistance, lots of reasons. Your job is to figure out why. Slow down your pace, use open questions, reflections, but resist your own anxiety to just fill the space. Let there be some silence.
Okay. What about when clients ask you questions? Personal stuff, maybe?
Yeah, that happens a lot. About you, your competence, the process. The framework Hill mentions is pretty useful. 1, listen respectfully, maybe reflect the question back. 2, get curious about why they're asking. That's an interesting question. What makes you ask that? 3, answer enough, be clear on safety stuff, firm on boundaries if it's intrusive. 4, explore the meaning behind their question. What need does it represent?
That's a helpful process. Okay, what about our difficulties? The helper's side.
Yes. Our own stuff gets in the way sometimes. Common ones include just not listening well. Maybe you're distracted, thinking about what to say next, judging them silently, or even getting too sympathetic, wanting to rescue them.
The rescuer trap.
Big time. Or you might just implement skills poorly, asking way too many closed questions, maybe because it feels safer, like a checklist.
Yeah, like the medical model.
Exactly. Or talking too much yourself. Remember, the client should do most of the talking, like 60–70%. Not allowing silence because you feel awkward. Disclosing too much about yourself, trying to be their buddy.
Right, blurring boundaries.
Giving premature advice, we saw that with Sandra, often comes from pressure to fix. or discouraging intense feelings because you're uncomfortable with sadness or anger.
Okay.
You might also see clients just circling, repeating the same things without going deeper. Often a sign your interventions are too vague or you're asking too many closed questions.
So it can be a cue about our technique.
Often, yeah. And failing to attend a culture, big one. Assuming Western-style exploration is best for everyone, when some cultures might value action more.
Gotta ask, not assume.
Then there's just having intense negative reactions to a client. It happens. Can stem from your own issues, projections, or sometimes genuinely perceiving something difficult in a client. Or even dissociating or panicking, feeling frozen or outside yourself due to anxiety. And finally, just feeling discouraged, like you're getting worse, not better.
That sounds like learning to ski, conscious of every awkward move.
Exactly. It's part of the process.
Okay, that's a lot of potential pitfalls. But the good news, you said, is there are ways to cope, strategies.
Yes, absolutely. And these are based on research with trainees, so we know they help.
Okay, lay them on us.
All right. Self-reflection is huge. Journaling, your own therapy, good supervision, these help you understand your motives, find those hot buttons, and work through your own stuff. Analyzing your work, watching videos of yourself, transcribing sessions, using that interpersonal process recall, IPR method, helps you unpack what was really going on, feeling-wise, for both of you.
Okay, digging deep.
Yeah. Observing models, watching experienced therapists work, makes the skills come alive, shows you different ways to be effective. Practice, practice, practice. Seriously. Role play everything, starting, ending, handling silence, anger with people you trust. Use imagery too. Visualize yourself handling tough situations well. Build that toolbox.
Repetition.
Emotion regulation for yourself, deep breathing, relaxation, mindfulness. Tools to manage your own anxiety in the moment. Let you think clearly. Focus on the client. This sounds simple, but shifting focus off your own performance and onto deeply understanding their world often melts away your own anxiety.
Get out of your own head.
Exactly. Positive self-talk. Work on that inner voice. Be encouraging to yourself. Keep learning case conceptualization. The better you understand why clients do what they do, the more empathy you'll have. And when you feel lost, return to empathy and exploration skills. Just default back. Take a breath, center yourself, focus on their feelings, use basic reflection, forgive yourself, reset. And finally, develop your own style. Be that personal scientist. Adapt things. Find what feels authentic to you with each unique client. Research backs this up. Self-reflection, supervision, therapy for the helper improves skills, and managing those tricky reactions like countertransference.
That's incredibly helpful. So, wrapping this up, what it really boils down to for you, the future helper, is the exploration stage is all about deep listening, truly trying to understand each unique client. No assumptions.
Right.
It needs a structured yet client-focused approach to case conceptualization, building that picture.
Yeah.
You use that flexible toolkit, attending, restating, reflecting feelings, open questions to help them explore both their stories and their emotions.
Content and the feeling.
And maybe most importantly, it's about managing your own stuff, your reactions, your challenges, using those coping strategies, and committing to ongoing self-reflection and practice.
Well said. That really covers it.
Okay. Final thought. Something for our listeners to chew on.
Yeah, here's something to ponder. We know clients often make huge strides just from being deeply heard in this exploration stage, right?
Yeah.
Even before any fancy interpretations. So how much of their change, do you think, comes purely from that experience? From feeling your genuine empathic presence? What's the power of connection itself beyond any specific technique you use?
That's a deep one.
It is. Something to think about as you start crafting your own way of being a helper.
A really powerful thought. Thanks for that. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on this deep dive into the exploration stage. Keep learning, keep practicing.
Yeah, keep at it.
We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.